There's a lot coming out, but so far I'm managing to keep up with it all. Let's start with Cruella. I'm not going to lie, I expected to hate this movie. I try to never let my expectations actually affect how I perceive a film and go in with an open mind, but in all honesty, I am quite tired of the Disney live-action sub-brand, and I didn't feel like Girl Boss Joker was going to change my mind about it. I'm shocked to say that I like this much more than I thought I would. Still, is it good? No. This is still at its core one of the most fundamentally flawed ideas for a film ever. Making a villain sympathetic is hard enough, but when the villain's core trait is that she kills puppies, you'd have to give me a film on the level of Citizen Kane to even begin to properly invest me, and even then I'm not sure if it would work. At the end of the day, it was never my opinion of Disney's current brand or what I thought the movie would be that kept me from ever connecting with it. It was the simple fact that the movie is at its very fundamental level something that I could not bring myself through. If I were to attempt to write the screenplay, granted I never would attempt this idea, it's an awful idea, I would try to cash in on some larger statement about the depravity of man, or redemption, or downfall, or some huge theme like that. But instead this film mostly ignores the fact that soon after the credits roll our hero is killing puppies. Yes, the film jokes around in the topic, but as the act itself never occurs within the runtime, the film decides it's better to just stay away. Now, with all of that prefaced, I have to commend the absolute insane bravery of director Craig Gillespie for, despite this project being doomed for all the aforementioned reasons, really giving it his all. He almost overcommits to making this something to behold. Half the establishing shots end in a close-up, and the camera often tracks through the exuberantly large sets. The impressive shots are admittedly, often pretty obviously, digitally enhanced, but even still the showmanship is commendable. There's one shot that I really like where a Steadicam operator must have had to sprint behind the cast and jump with them onto a bus. It's really nice to look at and pretty impressive. Which brings me to my next praise. The film is genuinely quite pretty most of the time. Yes, there's Uncanny Valley with some CGI dogs in particular, and yes, sometimes the frame is overwhelmed or focuses on something it shouldn't, but overall, the film is probably the best looking of Disney's live-action efforts in recent years. But, as they say, a gold-painted turd is still a turd. This isn't quite that bad, but the script has some huge issues. Besides the cowardice of not devolving our character in the third act to what she'd become in the first film, the film plays too hard with the quirky, misunderstood lead and has some truly cringe-inducing moments. There's a concert sequence in the middle of the film that I desperately wanted to look away from, because it's straight out of a Halloween spin-off of High School Musical. There's girl boss buzzwords and phrases thrown in periodically, which wouldn't be so strange and off-putting, except that we, again, are talking about a woman who grows up to be a puppy killer. And then ignoring all that, there's some twists and turns in the script that feel beyond unearned. There's a reveal towards the end that made me want to get up and use the bathroom. There's also just some strange moments where the character becomes completely unlikable, but the film still views her positively instead of trying to pull back. I have no problem with the lead being unlikable. There Will Be Blood is a 10 out of 10 film, but Daniel Plainview isn't a hero and the film knows that. I'm still unconvinced that this film realized that Cruella was the villain. There are strange elements in the script that I also can't quite figure out. Mild spoilers for something like 10 minutes into the film shows 3 Dalmatians killing an innocent woman in the beginning, and I can't quite place that reason for them being there at all. Was it that the film wanted to subconsciously point to Cruella being justified in killing Dalmatians? Which, if that's what it is, that's atrocious. It comes up later in the plot, but I'm still not quite sure about it. Speaking of Cruella, let's talk about Emma Stone. I think she does alright. As far as delivering the material she has, she does pretty well even. She also fails to elevate her role to the point of understanding, however. I do give some of this blame to the director, though, for not reeling her in, but either way, Stone does clearly have too much fun playing the part. It comes through the screen, but ends up affecting the viewing. Stone doesn't reach the manic levels the character was originated with, but also isn't sympathetic and ends up in a curious state somewhere in between. I do think she does pretty well, though, and Emma Thompson does wonderfully as the actual villain of the story, but that there is even more evidence that this film does not know that Cruella is the villain. On the other side of things, the film production is solid. Costume, set design, and aesthetic choices, in particular this newspaper overlay throughout the film, all look pretty great. I will say the soundtrack is a crutch. The film tries to go in on the popular songs playlist style soundtrack originated by Easy Rider, but obviously popularized in recent years by films like Guardians of the Galaxy. It doesn't work very well here at all. Songs seem thrown in at scenes with no care or idea why, and often are blaringly loud. It's like you're at a red light and the car next to you is pulled up blasting his music at max volume and the windows down, except instead of just watching a traffic light, you're trying to process and appreciate a film. Overall, this isn't nearly as bad as I thought I'd be, but with that said, it's so flawed at the fundamental level that any greatness achieved is overshadowed by how awful of an idea it all is. I wouldn't recommend this for a variety of reasons, but I am impressed by how competent this is despite everything. It genuinely is a very pretty film, but even with that, plus with the director trying his darndest and the cast giving solid performances, it just can't make up for what the film really is, which is just a script that lacks in every way and a soundtrack that tries to drown out the entire film. 4 out of 10. Then I saw A Quiet Place Part 2. One of my hotter takes in recent years was finding the original Quiet Place to be pretty mediocre. This was a rather interesting moment for me in general, as well as I'd gone with a large group of around 20 people from my college to see the film. It had quite a bit of hype around it, and we went opening night. We all sat in silence, as you should at a theater, and when we got up to talk after the movie, I was fully ready to hear others share my opinion that the film had not lived up to expectations. To my surprise, I was the only one that didn't love it. This review will spoil the first Quiet Place, so if you haven't seen that, click away now. Okay, my main problem with the first film was that it was insanely contrived and unbelievable to its core. The first film, and the second, but we'll get back to that, revolve around themes of protection and how that fits into parenting, masculinity, etc. John Krasinski's character is this peak of traditional masculinity. He's a survivalist to the core, he's a provider, the whole 9 yards. The first film asks you to believe that this man, who had rigged an entire light system to his basement to change colors, hadn't also wired a last resort speaker system to draw the monsters away. That film asks you to believe that the man who knew you could yell if you were next to a waterfall kept his family living on a farm where they were constantly in danger. It was all just too much for me. Luckily, he's dead, and the characters do really stupid things in this one, but it feels much more plausible since they aren't that guy. There are certain moments of nonsense here, and if you think too hard about this film, it absolutely gets sucked into its supply of black plot holes, but it does feel more forgivable than the first film for a number of reasons. The first being what I already mentioned, but also is that the film fully commits to a completely unbelievable level of parallel storytelling that gets up to 3 parallel stories going where each character is hitting the same beat at the same time. I'm seeing people complain about this, but it was a huge strength in my opinion. Once the plot's very design is that far removed from reality, it is much easier to forgive small contrivances. I know that sounds like a backhanded compliment, but I promise it isn't. To me, the design of this movie gave the plot a cohesion completely missing from the original film. The film does thematically build on what it means to provide and care for others. We see some gender role reversal in Millicent Simmons' Reagan taking the lead caretaker role in place of her father. We see 2 male characters falling short in providing but rising to the occasion through mostly earned character beats, and all of that works pretty well. Also, Krasinski really is a pretty great director. The opening sequence of this film is by far my favorite sequence in either film, and every choice is great. The camera placement, the editing, the sound design, the effects, every choice is lovely. He's certainly formulaic, however, and it does come back to bite him in certain moments. You always know when a jump is coming and roughly how long till each suspenseful moment is resolved, which definitely lessens the impact of moments that should be more important. On that front, though, I will praise that the jump scares are way more fun and earned than last time. The shower hand jump in the first film made me want to loudly groan, and there's nothing anywhere that bad in this one, which I'm very glad to report. The world building was something that people loved about the first work, and unfortunately we don't get too much new here, as this, after a prologue, picks up immediately where we left off. There is some new stuff, but yeah, I definitely could see fans of the first film feeling like this lacks originality when compared to its predecessor, and they'd probably be right. My other concern for this film is that it's paced almost too quickly. I think I will see this again and see if my opinion changes, but as of now, the film feels almost too fast-paced, and that it lacks a breathing room that it desperately needs. Certain elements aren't fleshed out enough to nearly have the impact that they should have otherwise, and that's disappointing. Overall, much like the first film, if you start questioning the script, you'll never stop, yet I found the film itself to be much more confident this time and the design of the film to work better than the first. It's not perfect, it both needs to flesh out what it presents and present more, however Krasinski really shows his chops here with some great choices, even down to the design of the film's parallel stories, which is sure to be divisive, but one that again works for me. I'm in a unique position when considering recommending this, as I did not like the first one that much. But yeah, if you liked the first one, go see this, and if you didn't, still see this one. I think it's a big improvement. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. If you saw these, what'd you think? Let me know in the comments below. As for upcoming videos, I'm not sure when my thoughts on Underground Railroad are coming. I got sidetracked and want to revisit some of it, plus it's so dense, but hopefully I will have a video on it at some point. It's definitely on the back burner though. I don't think I will give it a simple review if I do talk about it. I want to really dive into it. Besides that, in a few days Conjuring 3 comes out, so I'll definitely be giving my thoughts on that. Please like and subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you all next time. Peace.